want to do this interview with students' parents. I will just have the assessments out. If I sent it home with them, like a lot of teachers did for parent-teacher conferences that I witnessed during practicum, I will just have to make copies so then I'll be able to have them with me. But I also wrote a lot of notes. So, starting, Kennedy, the girl I worked with, she was confident. She talked to other students. She knew how to play with students, both at recess and in the classroom. So she has a lot of confidence. When she's in small group settings, like our center, she feels comfortable asking questions. But when she reaches a tendency to just assume, she has that confidence, but sometimes she assumes she knows words or guesses on the words without actually reading them. So, and that's one thing we can work on, but I love that she has no problem tackling challenges. She's strong-minded, she has lots of ideas, and she feels comfortable raising her hand. Sometimes this leads to her talking when the teacher's talking, so that's one thing we need to work on, but overall she's great. She's good at participating. Actually, typically she is very good at listening. She tends to follow directions easily. When I ask people to line up, she's very attentive, so that's great. She's very friendly. So we worked on 6 different assessments. We had a writing sample where I looked at 3 pieces of her writing and assessed them. We'll talk about it later. And then the retelling record sheet, I had her retell a book to me, which worked out great. We identified the beginning, middle, and end of stories. We worked on primary spelling inventory, so we worked on spelling a little bit and identified which word she knows without like practicing them beforehand, really. We worked on running records, and this is where she just read to me, and I assessed both how she comprehended what she read, but also mostly the main thing was if she understood all the words. The Burke reading interview was another assessment we worked with, and with this one I had a series of questions, and this helped me understand where the student was, which level, like how she saw your student Kennedy, how she was reading. And then we worked with high frequency words with the last assessment, the high frequency word reading task. And so I had her come into the hallway, and I had 4 different word groups, and I cut, and in each word group there were 9 words, and I cut them into little flashcards, and we just go one group at a time, and she'd pull up words and identify the words as she recognized them, and then read them out loud, and just like, so we did that as well. And so some areas of strength was her writing had improved. I noted that because I took a sample from the beginning of the quarter semester, the middle, and then where we are now, and she improved to like a perfect score from, so that was great. With comprehension, she was able to identify beginning, middle, and end aspects of a story when I read it out loud to her, and she knows a lot of high frequency words. But some things to work on to keep improving writing. You can work with improving a writer's voice with her. Out of a text, it says, as students develop their writer's voice, they can learn to vary their tone, to entertain, inform, and persuade. So one way to keep working with this is just exposure to literature through writing and reading. Doing lots of reading and writing can help students develop their voices. So at school, I'm going to work with her and other kids to keep writing in their journal daily, and I will help them identify aspects of their voice. And at home, you can kind of do the same thing. So you can read books with Kennedy to identify the parts of the author's voice in the text. Ask her what books she wants to read, and that will help her invest in her own reading and writing, and then have her write on her own. Have her write in her personal journal or something where she can write daily without any criticism, just to write. So with comprehension is a creative, multi-phased process in which students engage with and think about the text. So help her think about the background. At school, I'm going to have students read aloud and identify the beginning, middle, and end of stories when we do read alouds. And then when you're reading with her at home, have her do the same thing. Talk about the book, build background, identify beginning, middle, and end. And then you can do this like having her read aloud, you reading aloud, and her silently reading. Okay, she does know a lot of sight words, but she did struggle with the more recent ones and the more difficult ones. So again, repetition. You can cut out words and hang them around the house, and that way she can see them, is exposed to them. And one example I read about, a teacher used words where she hung them around the room, and then she'd also have the kids say them out loud when they were like lining up at the door, and just so they were able to say it, see it, and then she heard it as she repeated it to them. Yeah, so at school I'm going to do that same thing where I just have words all around the room, and I will just have multiple options of exposure. So I will just like say them so they can hear them, have them repeat it so they can say it, we'll spell it together, so just lots of exposure. So it's the same thing. So yeah, please do that. You can, at home, you can do this by just like taping them on mirrors when they're getting ready for school, or the back of cereal boxes. Alright, so things you need to work on is spelling. That's the first one. Again, she's confident, but she does spell a couple things wrong. Right now she's in the spelling stages of early spelling stages for like letter name and alphabetic spelling. We worked on some middle spelling, but she got most of those ones wrong, so we'll just keep working on spelling. So she struggled with some of the short vowels and some dip graphs. So through phonics and spelling instruction and more experience with reading and writing, students spell words more accurately. So just more exposure to literature will help with this a great deal. So at school, when students develop a visual image of words when they read, then they're able to recognize when a spelling, like when a word isn't spelled correctly when they're writing on their own. So I'm just gonna work with them on creating mental images as we work through. So I'm gonna have, along with taping words up around the room, I'm gonna have visuals with it. Say if it's a door, I'm gonna hang the word door on the door, or a map, I'm gonna hang it on the map. But yeah. But if, say it's, I can't remember, a cow, we won't be able to have a cow in the room, so I'll just tape a cow next to it, so they'll be able to create this mental image with it. So it would be helpful at home if you could do something along those lines of having visuals, say, and you don't have to actually print images, but if you tape the words next to what they actually are, if you have the option, say like hats, tape it on a hat, and then she'll be like, oh, this is a hat, and then create that mental image. But also, I would like you to work with her more with sound as well, so just say them out loud with her instead of having these, if you can't print off any images, just say the words out loud as you see them around the room, and it'll be, it'll be helpful because it'll just help her identify when she's reading as well. For one of the other ones we did was a running record, so it's just reading words. So with the running record, sorry, This is just working with vocab again. And this is, again, just this repetition of vocab will be very helpful. So just when she's reading, she was very confident about it, but she just kept reading words wrong without realizing she was. So slowing down reading would be very helpful. Have her read out loud to you at home, and as she's reading out loud, like, have her slow down, look at each word, and we have strategies that I can send home with her. Just like chopping the word. She knows how to do it on her arm to chop the word down. And that would be great. At school, I'll be helping her to slow down as well, and I'll just be pulling her aside during centers, and we'll just work on it specifically, word chopping, and just looking at each part of the word. For the last one, it was she used a lot of repetition in her writing samples, so she was able to, like, get a perfect score. There were a lot of sentences that start with the same thing: she was, she was, she was. And so this is, again, what I talked about before, is building that writer's voice. And luckily we already talked about this. It's the same thing, just like looking at sentence structures. And so at home you can do this by, when you're reading a book, picking a book, or I'll send home a book that has different sentence beginnings, and then you can show her this, and then when she practices in her own, like, little writing journal, she can practice doing that, her one at home. At school, I'm going to keep having her writing in her journal, and I'll ask her specifically to look at these things when she's writing in it. So those are some things that she can work on at home and at school, and she will be working on at school. So in summarizing these assessments, she has identified more sight words, and she's learning to write, and her writing is improving. She does use a lot of repetition in her writing, and at the beginning of the sentences, sometimes she talks in circles or writes in circles. Her comprehension has been improving quite a bit. One thing she needs to work on is spelling, and that comes with exposure to literature, to reading and writing, and overall, when you're exposed to reading and writing, you're just going to improve quite a bit, so just keep working on that at home. She needs to work on reading the words completely, and yeah, and that's about it. Thank you so much for your time.